have a new job, there's always the need for orientation. My first day in the desert was to fly into a production camp. And at the production camp, they took me through a little orientation thing about safety in the desert. And it was probably good I had that orientation. I think, as we all know, during World War II, there was a lot of action in the Sahara, Libyan Sahara. And the place was, the whole desert in certain areas had been filled with landmines. This is 1963, and that's after World War II, but they were still finding ordnance, bombs, all kinds of stuff in the desert. So you had to be careful of that, but nobody knew where they were if you were just driving around. So the ordnance map was an actual map of the Libyan desert, and it had marks on it where there could be a powder dump, there could be a gasoline dump, usually associated with a cairn of rocks covering it. And we were told, make sure you keep your eye open for those and stay away from them. So on that first day, a man that was working there in that production facility took me aside and he said, we have a vehicle here. I want you to look at it. And I don't remember what kind of vehicle it was, but every surface on the front of that vehicle, the hood, the grill, the windshield, all the paint was taken off. It was polished metal. And I thought, wow, that's strange. And he said, well, obviously the reason that paint is gone and the windshield is all messed up is that this vehicle was in a ferocious sandstorm. It just blasted the paint off. Then he said, but there's a lesson for you on this, and just keep it in mind. He said, let's suppose you're out there and you run out of gas. What do you do? What if you don't have a two-way radio with you? What are you supposed to do? And he said, the rule is you never leave the vehicle. And then he told a story. In fact, before I tell you the story, he said, stay with the vehicle. Well, maybe you don't have enough food to eat. Maybe you don't have any food. Maybe you don't even have any water. And he said, if that's the case, you stay with that vehicle anyway. And if you need water, you drink the water out of the radiator. You have to maintain life. But don't leave the vehicle. In the meantime, on some sort of a schedule, maybe at noon every day or in the evening, take one of the tires off the vehicle, throw some gas on it, and light it. That tire will burn for maybe a couple hours. It's black smoke. And if you're supposed to be at a particular location, drilling location, you haven't showed up there, somebody's going to be asking questions. Why hasn't this guy gotten back? Somebody will come looking for you. That black smoke is a pretty good indicator that somebody's having problems. They're going to bring some help. So anyway, the story was these two guys were sent out in a vehicle and they ran out of gas. Lesson number 1, never leave without checking your gas. Lesson number 2, never leave without checking your oil. Number 3, never leave without checking the water in the radiator. And take food and water as it's needed. So the two guys ran out of gas. They sat in the Jeep. They were told to stay with it. But here's the tragedy of the story. After a couple of days, they had, in fact, drunk some of the water from the radiator. There wouldn't be any, what do you call it, for wintertime.
Antifreeze.
There was no antifreeze, and it was rusty water, but it would make it possible to continue hydrated. But interesting enough, these two guys became extremely impatient. Finally, they said, nothing's happening. Nobody's come out to find us. Joe, you go one way. I'm going to go the opposite way. So they took off. And here's the tragedy of the story. They were only 2 miles from a drilling site. They didn't even know it. They both walked in directions that took them away. They both died. So it was a serious issue. So my orientation was, be a thinker. Make sure you're not assuming things that you're not in control of. Always be prepared. Good Boy Scout wisdom, right?